Chapter 1. Transmigration and Memories. The alarm clock rang. Again. Odin slammed his hand down on the buzzing device without opening his eyes. Another day. Another shift. Another tasteless meal at the same cafeteria. Another evening staring at the blank ceiling of his cheap apartment. His life was an endless loop. A monotonous cycle of work. Eat, sleep, repeat. At 28, Odin was already worn down, not by physical labor, but by the suffocating sameness of it all. He worked as an office clerk in a mid-tier company, pushing papers and crunching numbers that meant nothing to him. His colleagues were faces he exchanged polite nods with, but never truly spoke to. His superiors only barked orders. His family, well, they lived far away, and calls had grown rare. Odin was a man alive but not living. Every night, as he trudged home, he found himself staring up at the city lights, silently muttering prayers. If there are gods, any god at all, please give me something different, anything, just something that changes this hell of a life. He never expected an answer. Until one rainy night, on his way back from another overtime shift, the world did answer, cruelly. A flash of headlights, the screech of tires, a heavy impact that tore the air from his lungs. The pain was sharp, then mercifully numb. His last thought as he sank into darkness was strangely peaceful. Finally, something's different. When Odin opened his eyes again, the world was not the same. He jolted upright, his body strangely lighter yet stronger, his surroundings foreign. No sterile white hospital ceiling. Instead, intricate carvings stretched across a canopy bed, draped in silk curtains embroidered with golden threads. He blinked at his reflection in the polished silver mirror across the room, only to choke on his own breath. That face. It was his, but not. The man in the mirror had Odin's sharp jawline, his slightly upturned nose, his familiar dark eyes, but everything else was different. His posture was regal, his hair longer and tied with a crest pin, his body leaner, yet exuding strength. He was clothed in fine garments too extravagant to belong to any ordinary man. Before Odin could question further, a sharp pain split through his head. Memories, alien yet familiar, flooded him in crashing waves. He was Kael Arden, son of House Arden, a powerful alpha noble family in the Empire of Eldara. Known across the Royal Academy as a prankster, Kael lived to stir mischief, but his teasing always had a target. Lucy, a quiet, delicate Omega student. The one Kael constantly sought out with pranks, tricks, and harmless bullying. He never bullied anyone else, just Lucy. It was as if Kael had been obsessed, though never cruel. Pulling chairs, hiding books, sneaking frogs into Lucy's desk, small antics that made Lucy pout while Kael roared with laughter. As the memories settled, Odin's chest tightened. He understood now. This wasn't a dream. This was another world. An ancient Omegaverse world, where society was divided into alphas, betas, omegas, and above them all, the rare and mysterious enigmas. Kael Arden was an alpha, and his biggest mistake, his constant bullying of Lucy, was etched into his reputation at the academy. Odin, no, Kael, squeezed his fists. He wasn't Kael Arden, not truly, but now he had this body, this life. He wouldn't waste it repeating the past. He wouldn't torment that Omega anymore. From this day on, he swore. He would never bully Lucy again. In fact, he'd avoid him at all costs. Little did Kael know that this single decision would change not only his life, but the destiny of the Empire itself. The morning bell of the Royal Academy rang in the distance, and somewhere in the same city, a certain Omega named Lucy glanced out his window, a faint smile playing on his lips. He didn't know why, but he felt it. His beloved Alpha was about to change, and he would never let him go. Chapter 2. The Enigma's Frustration. At the Royal Academy, students whispered of many things: duels between alphas, the elegance of noble omegas, the brilliance of scholars. But almost no one spoke of Lucy. He was quiet, too quiet. The type who melted into corners of the library, slipped in and out of lecture halls without drawing eyes. The type most would forget existed, if not for one person. Kael Arden. For years, Lucy's name had been tied to Kael's laughter. A frog leaping from Lucy's satchel, ink splattering across his pristine notes, the mysterious vanishing of his lunch. Small tricks, childish pranks, never cruel, yet relentless. To the outside world, it was as if Lucy existed for Kael's amusement. But to Lucy, no, to Lucien Draven, Crown Prince of Eldera disguised as a fragile Omega, that had been perfect. He wanted no one's gaze but Kael's. The less attention others paid him, the better. After all, he was destined to become emperor. And emperors had enemies. If anyone uncovered his true nature too soon, if anyone dared covet him, it might ruin his carefully laid plan. His plan to claim his beloved Alpha. But then, things changed. At first, Lucien thought it was one of Kael's whims. One day, Kael simply stopped pulling pranks, stopped seeking him out, stopped looking at him. Lucien remembered that day vividly. The empty desk beside him, the silence where laughter should have been. He remembered waiting, expecting Kael to trip him in the corridor, to tug his sleeve during lectures, but nothing came. Days turned into weeks. Kael no longer crossed his path, no longer teased him. Lucien's lips curved into a sharp, dangerous smile. "Avoiding me, are you?" Lucien began his attempts. He accidentally dropped his books in Kael's path, waiting for that familiar chuckle, that mocking remark. Kael stepped around him without a word. He brushed shoulders with Kael in the hall, murmuring a soft, "Oh, sorry." Kael stiffened, muttered a polite, "It's fine," and walked on. He lingered outside the training grounds, knowing Kael always sparred there. Kael left through the opposite gate. Each failure sent irritation prickling down Lucien's spine. His Omega disguise trembled under the weight of his fury. No, he reminded himself, his Enigma instincts. Possessive, territorial, unyielding. Kael was his laughter, his gaze, his attention, all belonged to him. How dare Kael take them away? One evening, Lucien stood on the academy rooftop, staring down at the training yard where Kael barked orders at a group of juniors. The Alpha's hair glistened under torchlight, his voice steady and commanding. Lucien's nails bit into his palms until they drew blood. From the first time he'd seen Kael, with that infuriating grin and fearless energy, Lucien had vowed to himself, "I will make him mine, my queen, the mother of my children, my forever." No amount of distance would change that. If Kael refused to come to him, then he, Lucien, would close the distance himself. Graduation approached like a storm. Kael, with his natural talent and quick wit, earned the title of Commander of the Imperial Knights, chosen personally for his loyalty and strength. Students cheered, nobles praised, and Kael stood tall in his ceremonial armor. On the other side of the hall, Lucy, small, quiet, unassuming, accepted his own diploma without fanfare. To the world, he was nothing more than a forgettable Omega. But within those fragile shoulders burned the fire of an Enigma destined to rule. Within months, Lucy shed his mask. Lucien Draven, Crown Prince, ascended the throne as Emperor of Eldara. From the golden seat of power, his eyes still followed one man. His Alpha, his Kael. And now, no disguise, no distance, no title would stop him. The empire itself would bend, if only to place Kael Arden at his side. Lucien's vow was sealed the day he took the throne. "I will claim him. I will make him mine, until even the stars envy the way he belongs to me." And this time, nothing, absolutely nothing, would make him let go. Chapter 3. The Royal Proposal. A year passed like the turning of a page. The Empire of Eldera stood taller than ever before under its new ruler. Emperor Lucien Draven had ascended with elegance, brilliance, and ruthlessness, swiftly stabilizing the throne and silencing those who dared question his rise. But what the people did not see was the truth behind his iron determination. Every reform, every campaign to expand the empire's borders, every decree that earned him the people's admiration, all of it was simply to clear his path. The path that led to Kael Arden. Every night, after hours of council meetings and endless scrolls of state affairs, Lucien dismissed his attendants and retired to his private chamber. There he pored over reports, not of political rivals or military campaigns, but of one man's life. The commander of the Imperial Knights, the Alpha who once teased him, the Alpha who now avoided him, Kael Arden. Lucien knew what Kael ate, what time he trained his soldiers, which villages he patrolled during missions, even the exact expressions Kael wore when he was tired or irritated. He knew too much. He wanted more. No, he needed more. At last, when the Empire prospered and his people adored him, Lucien decided the time had come. The Emperor of Eldara sent out a royal edict, not of war, not of diplomacy, but of marriage. A proposal, not to another royal house, not to a political ally, to Kael Arden. When Kael returned from his month-long mission subduing rebels in the southern plains, he expected a night of rest. Instead, his family greeted him with flushed excitement. "Kael," his father said, gripping his shoulders tightly, "the Emperor himself has chosen you." Kael froze. "Chosen me?" His mother's eyes gleamed with tears. "The Emperor wishes to take you as his consort, to marry into the throne." Kael's blood ran cold. He ripped off his gloves, jaw tight. "What nonsense are you saying? I'm an alpha. How can the Emperor choose me? This is an honor." His father cut him off sharply. "Refusal is treason, Kael. Our house, our family, cannot afford your stubbornness." Kael's fists clenched. Treason. A word heavier than any chain. The next day, Kael stormed into the palace. He would not accept this. He would meet the Emperor face to face, reject him, and put an end to this madness. The great throne room was silent as Kael entered. Torches burned against gilded walls, the banners of Eldara fluttering gently. And there on the throne of gold sat the man everyone worshipped. The Emperor Lucien Draven. Kael stopped dead. That face, those eyes, the gentle curve of his lips. "Lucy," Kael whispered. Lucien rose slowly, every movement deliberate, graceful, yet carrying the weight of command. "It has been some time, Kael." His voice was deeper, steadier than before, but still carried that softness Kael remembered. Kael's heart pounded. The quiet, forgettable Omega boy he once pranked at the academy was the Emperor. Kael started, but Lucien crossed the distance before he could finish. The Emperor's gloved hand reached for him, steady and unyielding, before slipping into Kael's calloused palm. His other hand rose, cupping Kael's cheek, as if holding something infinitely precious. Kael stiffened, but Lucien only smiled, an expression of pure devotion. "You look even more radiant than I remembered," Lucien murmured. Then, with a faint exhale, he released a wave of his calm Enigma pheromones. The heavy air wrapped around Kael like silk, soothing, intoxicating. Kael's knees nearly buckled. What are you doing?" "Let me tell you the truth." Lucien's voice dropped low, soft enough that it seemed meant for Kael alone. "I was never an Omega. I am an Enigma. And from the very first day I laid eyes on you, Kael Arden, I swore to myself I would make you mine." Kael's eyes widened, his chest tightening under the weight of those words. Lucien continued, his thumb brushing against Kael's cheekbone with infinite tenderness. "Your laughter. Do you know what it meant to me? When you teased me, when you smiled so brightly, it was the only time I felt alive in that suffocating academy. I endured everything, every disguise, every humiliation just to remain by your side." He leaned closer, his breath warm against Kael's skin. "You are my joy, my reason, my everything." And with that, Lucie's eyes, he impressed a gentle kiss against Kael's forehead. Kael's entire body froze. The great Emperor of Eldara, ruler of millions, was speaking with such raw devotion, as though Kael alone was his world. Shocked, Kael could only stare, his heart racing uncontrollably. But Lucien's gaze, unwavering and filled with possession, made it clear. Whether Kael accepted it or not, the Emperor had already decided. Kael Arden belonged to him, and nothing would ever change that. Chapter 4. Marriage and Tsundere Love. The wedding of an emperor was not a simple affair. For 1 full month, the capital of Eldera roared with celebration. Lanterns lit the skies, merchants filled the streets, and bards sang endlessly of the union between the mighty Emperor Lucien Draven and Commander Kael Arden. The people adored their ruler, and if their beloved emperor had chosen a consort, even an alpha, it must be fate itself. They rejoiced as though the marriage was their own. Kael, however, felt anything but joy. The ceremony had been dazzling, the palace decked in gold and silver, the vows spoken beneath banners of victory. He had stood stiffly in ceremonial robes while Lucien's eyes never left his face, brimming with the kind of devotion that made Kael's stomach twist. Now, as consort of the Emperor, Kael expected his life to change entirely. Yet, it didn't, at least not in the way he feared. Lucien doted on him, excessively, shamelessly. He followed Kael through the palace halls, no matter how busy the council meetings or state affairs. He insisted on feeding him by hand during meals, ignoring Kael's protests as servants tried to hide their smiles. At night, he dragged Kael into his arms, cuddling him close until sleep claimed them both. "You're the Emperor," Kael muttered one evening, trapped against Lucien's chest. "Shouldn't you be doing something more important?" "There is nothing more important than you," Lucien replied simply, pressing a kiss into Kael's hair. Kael groaned and turned away, but the tips of his ears burned red. Even after marriage, Kael continued his duties as commander of the knights. Lucien never stopped him. On the contrary, he let Kael lead, proud of his beloved's strength. Yet whenever true danger arose, it was Lucien who ended it swiftly, never letting Kael bear unnecessary risk. "Do you think I would allow my consort to be touched by blood and danger?" Lucien whispered once, pulling him close after a grueling campaign. "Your sword may protect the Empire, Kael, but I will protect you, always." Kael had tried to argue, but his words faltered under the intensity of Lucien's gaze. 6 months passed. Lucien's devotion never wavered. Even after marriage, he never stopped courting Kael. Flowers, letters, surprise visits to the training grounds, every day was another reminder of how relentless the Emperor's love was. And slowly, Kael's heart betrayed him. Though he still rolled his eyes, still muttered complaints, still called Lucien a clingy fool, there were moments, quiet and fleeting, where his lips softened into a smile. When he caught himself reaching for Lucien's hand without thinking. When he realized that, despite everything, he no longer wanted to imagine life without him. Lucien noticed. He always noticed. The night of their 6-month anniversary, Lucien finally claimed what he had waited years for. The Emperor's pheromones filled their chamber, rich and intoxicating, wrapping Kael in a haze of warmth and desire. Pressed beneath Lucien's weight, Kael gasped as sharp teeth sank into his neck, an Enigma's permanent mark. "Mine," Lucien whispered, voice breaking with devotion. "Forever mine." Kael's body trembled, his hand clutching desperately at Lucien's robe. He wanted to protest, to scold, to deny, but all that came out was a shaky breath as pleasure and heat consumed him. That night, they consummated their bond. Lucien's obsession only grew deeper. He made love to Kael frequently, showering him with his pheromones until Kael's body carried his scent everywhere. He never stopped kissing the mark on Kael's neck, sometimes even remarking him with bites when jealousy surged too strong. Every glance Kael gave to others, every laugh not directed at him, sent a growl rumbling through Lucien's chest. He was emperor of the continent, but in his heart he was a man maddened by love, consumed by the need to keep Kael close, to remind him over and over, "You are mine. No one else will ever have you." And though Kael groaned, scolded, and pushed him away with Tsundere annoyance, he no longer truly meant it. For deep inside, his heart had already chosen. Chapter 5. The Heir of the Empire. The Empire had already grown used to its emperor being hopelessly smitten with his consort. Lucien had never once let go of Kael's hand in public, never let his gaze wander elsewhere, and never allowed anyone to so much as brush past his beloved without sharp warning pheromones flooding the halls. And yet, none of that compared to the moment Kael discovered he was pregnant. He had been sparring with a junior knight, moving with his usual sharpness and commanding aura, when suddenly dizziness overtook him. Lucien, who had secretly been watching from the gallery as he always did, was at his side before Kael even stumbled. "Enough," Lucien said firmly, scooping Kael into his arms as if he weighed nothing. "You're pale. You shouldn't be here." Kael scowled, trying to push at Lucien's chest. "I'm not fragile. Put me down, Your Majesty." But when the physician's trembling hands revealed the truth, that Kael carried life within him, the entire palace changed overnight. Lucien's obsession reached new heights. He forbade Kael from lifting even a practice sword. He placed knights at the door of their chambers 24 hours a day. He growled low in his throat whenever servants approached too near. When Kael tried to wander the gardens by himself, Lucien's voice was sharp, edged with panic. "Never without me," Lucien ordered, pulling him close and pressing a possessive kiss to his marked neck. "You are carrying our heir. I won't risk you for a single moment." Kael rolled his eyes, lips twitching despite himself. "You treat me like a glass ornament. I'm a knight, not porcelain." But his Tsundere protest softened when Lucien knelt in front of him one night, resting his head against Kael's growing stomach, whispering with raw devotion. "You're giving me the greatest gift I never thought I could have. I will cherish you both with my entire soul." Kael's heart trembled. He turned away, muttering, "Idiot. Stop saying things like that." But his hand quietly threaded into Lucien's hair, holding him there. When the Empire learned their beloved emperor and consort were expecting an heir, the celebrations shook the land. Bells tolled for days, markets overflowed with flowers and ribbons, and nobles from every house sent extravagant gifts. Yet, Lucien ignored all of them. His world had narrowed down to Kael. Kael's every mood, Kael's cravings, Kael's safety. If Kael so much as frowned, Lucien dismissed 10 servants on the spot. If Kael wanted late-night sweets, Lucien personally carried trays of delicacies from the kitchens. "Lucien, stop hovering," Kael complained as he was fed grapes one by one in the palace gardens. Lucien smirked, leaning down to kiss the corner of his lips. "I will hover until my last breath. You're mine, my consort, my alpha, the bearer of my heir. No one else will ever deserve to look at you." The day of birth arrived with chaos and trembling anticipation. The palace halls were flooded with anxious knights, midwives, and physicians. Lucien never left Kael's side, clutching his hands so tightly his knuckles turned white, whispering reassurances even when Kael cursed him with every contraction. "You did this to me, you obsessive bastard," Kael growled, sweating and glaring. Lucien only pressed desperate kisses to his damp forehead. "Yes, and I'd do it again 1,000 times. You're my life, Kael. Don't you dare leave me." Hours later, when the cries of their newborn filled the chamber, Lucien wept openly. He gathered Kael into his arms, kissing his tears, his hair, his lips over and over. Then he carefully held their child against Kael's chest, his voice trembling with reverence. "Our family, our eternity." Kael looked down at the tiny bundle, his sharp eyes softening. The baby's little fingers curled around his. Despite his exhaustion, he laughed faintly. "Imperial Mother," the midwife prompted gently, bowing as tradition dictated. Kael froze. Then his child's small cries echoed again, and Lucien's arms circled him from behind. Kael exhaled, letting out a helpless laugh that was filled with warmth and chaos both. "Imperial Mother, huh? Fine, if it makes you happy." Lucien kissed his marked neck possessively, his pheromones wrapping Kael and their child in suffocating love. "It makes me the happiest man alive." 1 year later, the Empire still remembered the day their emperor and consort gave them an heir. But for Kael Arden, once Odin the bored salaryman, the true miracle was this. He was no longer trapped in a meaningless cycle of empty days. He was Kael, commander of knights, consort of the emperor, and mother, to their child who giggled at his pranks and adored him endlessly. As Lucien clung to him possessively and their little one tugged at his robe, calling him mother, Kael threw his head back and laughed warmly. He finally had the life he wished for: chaos, love, obsession, and a family that would never let him go.